I mean, that'd be a pretty crazy thing to do in the final. We'll go, okay, Tony, you're going to go first.
Yeah, it's a big, this is kind of the defining meta matchup, isn't it, really? Mitsurugi Ryzeal against Maliss, the two top contenders. Probably, if you were going to go around and ask everyone in the room, what do you think's going to win, they'd probably have said one of these decks.
Yeah, exactly that. And being able to open up with one of your stronger options for the Ryzeal strategy in the form of the X, and that's going to get met with the Ash Blossom. The one downside of not being able to go second, I suppose, with the X, and not being able to be chain blocked or protect it as well as you might want to. Normal summon the Saji is a great normal summon to have, which is going to open up the door to the Mitsurugi lines in this particular build.
Ash Blossom on X feels like a little bit of a Hail Mary. Most people like to hold it for those powerful effects. Maybe you could hit a ritual spell with Ash, maybe you could hit a duo drive. So if you're using it on X, maybe you're just being very hopeful. We'll find out now whether we have a response to this duo drive. But duo drive resolving can often spell game over. And I don't know what Tony thinks. He seems like he's very relaxed, but we'll find out now. Not a duo drive, first of all. Going to start with a King of the Feral Imps.
Yeah, I feel that this is probably one of the ones exactly like I say. Maybe holding the Ash Blossom. If you know your opponent's on Mitsurugi, you hold it for the Habakuri's reveal, then working into the monster, then the tribute, possibly to get the most advantage out of the back of this. But being allowing to let the King of the Feral Imps resolve, we're going to be searching out what I could only imagine is the Habakuri, unless there is already one in Cormac's hand.
There is that other powerful card, the Dominus Impulse. Will we see it? Or will this ritual spell resolve? We'll have a Habakiri first.
Yeah, very, very true. Dominus Impulse. One of my current favorite track cards. I really do like the Dominus cards. Even the brand new one, Songs of the Dominus. Not yet as effective as its predecessors in the form of Purge and Impulse, but maybe one day that will kind of lend itself to different decks as well.
Yeah, giving up hand effects altogether is a bit steeper of a cost than half the attributes in the game, because you can just play it in the decks where you have the attributes that you want.
Yeah, so the Aura Master is going to be entering the field of play, activating the Mitsurugi prayers, tributing off the Murakumo, Habakuri, also paying those 800 life points in order to get both effects.
Yeah, Cormac getting pretty much the full pop-off. I think one Ash Blossom, not enough to stop the Meta Tyrant that is Mitsurugi Ryzeal when it opens with access to both of its engines. As we mentioned in a previous round, he's running a bit lighter on the Ryzeal engine. So we're not going to see, for example, a Ryzeal Cross on the field, but still going to be a pretty intimidating field nonetheless. I think he's going to have access to a couple of rank 4s and presumably a Murakumo. So we're going to see what Tony can do about it.
Yeah, I can't imagine going through 11 rounds of Swiss unless you were incredibly lucky or maybe unlucky that you've been able to avoid the Mitsurugi Ryzeal. I'm pretty sure that Tony's top 4 match is actually against the exact same deck, so he's probably got a bit of experience in this position, allowing his opponent to work his way through. It looks like we've maybe added the Futsu off of this, possibly telegraphing that there is the Murakumo in the hand, or maybe... yeah, so there we go. So we know the Murakumo. We know pretty much everything from the looks of this. There's another prayers in there, the Mitsurugi Ritual. Cormac going full on with his Mitsurugi roots.
Yeah, Tony's just saying, oh, what cards do I know in your hand? And Cormac's saying 4, because he's already searched 4 times, which is absolutely crazy. Here comes Murakumo.
Yeah, activating the ritual spell. Are we tributing from...
It looks like he's tributing from the hand, yeah. I wonder if he's got enough to... He does play Night Sword Sup, but maybe he's just leaving that in the deck. Or maybe he's already drawn it or something like that. I'm not sure how many level 4s he's playing, because that can make a difference sometimes, because he's already got a number of level 4s.
Yeah, it looks like we've got all of the names. If they're all being played at 1, which does look like that's the case, Aramasa, Kusanagi, and Saji have all been utilized. Have we possibly gone through all Habakuris, or do you not want to be tributing the Habakuri from the deck?
Well, if you've already used Habakuri, then you might as well tribute something from your hand and get a search out of it. I think is probably the plan, right?
Yeah.
You can only use the search effect of each once per turn, so you might as well use the Futsu if you've already used the Habakuri. And yeah, here's the Duo Drive going to resolve. It's normally a telltale sign that you're going to face no further interruptions, because it is the most premium card to interrupt in the Ryzeal deck, giving you not one, but 2 searches. Cormac not being good to the audience here, putting his cards just out of shot.
He doesn't want to show even the commentators or the audience any information on this one, keeping it very, very close to the chest. And so he should. I mean, he is absolutely one Ash Blossom, still able to present this field. As mentioned many a times, just because there's only been one interruption coming from the hand, don't think that Tony may or may not have something else that could interact here. But I believe we're going to be seeing the combo of Murakumo plus the Detonator, both very, very destructive cards on their own side. But we're actually going to go in for the Daguerres.
Yeah, I was thinking there might be a node in the hand, so you can make a rank 4 and then summon the node and sweep up the rank 4 with node's effect and then make a detonator that way. So trade in that Furlos for 2 more cards. He's going to have so many interruptions. And in the semi-final, we saw him set 4 cards, like as well as his full Ryzeal Mitsurugi combo, 4 more interruptions. He's also main decking the Purification trap, so he's going to have 1 extra layer of interruption on his field that the usual Ryzeal Mitsurugi board would not have.
Yeah, exactly that. And we already know that there is a guaranteed prez in the hand, which will allow him to pretty much custom choose when he wants to trigger off the Makumo's effect, which can be very, very strong against Tony's Maliss strategy, because mentioned before, you kind of want your Malisses to stay on the field to be able to utilize their effects. Depending on what else gets played, to try and banish them, maybe in the March here to give him as much advantage as possible off the back of that. But I still feel that we're looking at a very, very good, if not the best possible end field that could be presented via the Mitsurugi Ryzeal strategy.
Yeah, he just keeps going. Like after all this, he's still got the pre-prep. Cormac using full use of the pre-prep there, being able to add a ritual from your grave to your hand. So the spell has to come from the deck, but the monster can come from the grave or the deck. So having those 3 copies allows you to have a bit more recursion in your deck.
Yeah, exactly that, especially with the mirror being able to put itself back into the deck as well. I think it's very, very important to remember that, to make sure that your preparation isn't going to be a stumbling block for you as much as you possibly can. I can also see that Tony does play the Bestials.
Yeah, between those 3 Drawn Lockbirds and those 2 Mistaken Arrests, there's just a whole pile of cards that could prevent Cormac from playing to the fullest extent of his Mitsurugi deck.
Yeah, so we're going to be setting one here. Normal summon Dormouse.
Yeah, it's such a moment, because you're so used to when somebody sets one, you think, oh, you know, maybe they're going to pass. You just think for a second they might pass. But obviously with Maliss, that's far from the case. They could always have a Maliss trap. Oh, maybe you can hear the excitement in the back of this one. So Cormac being able to activate the Meowis, which is obviously a very incredibly good card against the Maliss strategy, but then Tony being able to respond with his own Ash Blossom. And for Cormac, he opened up the second Meowis in order to kind of guarantee he'll be getting at least 1 draw instead of 2 off of every summon from the Banish or Grave. I was going to say, it does feel kind of bad, your opponent resolving a Meows, but 1 Meows is definitely better than 2. I did see, actually, while I was perusing the Swiss earlier in the weekend, somebody managed to hit 2 Meows with a single Call by the Grave, which I thought was very cool. But Ash can only deal with 1 at a time.
Yeah, unfortunately for Tony on that one. Now we're going to be seeing probably one of the biggest questions of the entire weekend so far is how much advantage do you give your opponent under a Charmy? Sometimes you want to take the risk, you want to give them as much advantage as possible because you feel that your end field will be that strong that your opponent won't be able to break it. But on the other side of that, you try to navigate around it to make sure you don't give them as much advantage as possible. And you kind of want to think that at these particular positions in time, when you're in the final of a UK National, you've already faced down the potential of something like this resolving on you, and that's kind of where you need to know lines as clear and as consistently as possible, because with 33 minutes left on the clock, still a long way to go, but keep in mind we want to be taking this to a game 3 if you are in Tony's seat right now.
Yeah, it also really depends on the cards in Tony's hand. Like, if you have a Drawn Lockbird or a Mistaken Arrest, you might think, okay, I don't need to do that much. I have my side deck card. It's going to stop you. So I can just relax, take a turn, and then next turn I will, you know, take over the game and special summon a load. So we'll find out what his strategy is going to be. It looks like, given he declined to use even, for example, the White Rabbit that he banished, that he's probably going to take that approach. He's probably not going to give Cormac too many draws off this Meows.
Yeah, I think trying to get access to as many disruptions as you possibly can. So Maliss in the mirror. We know that he's also added from the deck to the hand the March Hare. The one set card could be anything from a Dominus Impulse, a Mistaken Arrest, Infinite Impermanence, MTP07, or of course that GWC, which will allow him to extend a little bit further should he need to, but also gives him the ability to hold it back for during his opponent's turn if he wants to.
Yeah, set cards in Maliss. You obviously can set a card, and often you do set the traps before you summon a Maliss monster to play around Impermanence, for example, or Effect Veiler or something like that, but it doesn't have to be one of those. You can just set one to bluff your opponent that you have one of those cards.
Yeah, and it looks like we were saving the White Rabbit for this particular moment, because we've been able to banish the White Rabbit, and we have declared to use the effect, taking 300 life points, and giving Cormac an additional draw. I believe Cormac has drawn 2 cards, so we've been able to replace both the activations of the Meowth, so Cormac should now be back to 5 cards. At this point, you're basically balancing the game back out, as if those Meowths never really left the hand. This might be a position that Tony feels semi-comfortable with now that he doesn't want to be banishing too much more or reviving more from the graveyard.
Yeah, it feels like he's probably going to summon something else. I mean, the Echo Talker would give another draw to Cormac, would summon out of the grave. But I feel like you don't just summon a March Hare and a Rabbit just to pass. At least that's my feeling.
Yeah, completely agree. I feel the question is going to come down to exactly that. Do you go to the Allied Code Talker and provide Cormac with an additional draw, or do you go for something like the Topologic Bomber Dragon if you have control over that?
Could also be a Heart Scripter here.
Exactly
Prevent the extra draw, and it's such a powerhouse in any sort of grind game. This, you're going to banish your opponent's cards. It doesn't target, so it's incredibly difficult to respond to as well.
Yep, so it looks like we're going to be passing over to Cormac here with 1 card left in the hand, 3 set along the spell and trap zones, and then exactly that, the powerful Heart Scripter with the White Rabbit banished currently, so the Heart Scripter's effect is online.
Yeah, everything is very much online for Tony. Got that Maliss in the mirror. Going to be able to banish with the Heart Scripter. Got a bit of everything, and then there's always the possibility that one of those face-down cards or cards in the hand could be a draw and lock or a Mistaken Arrest.
Yeah, exactly that. I think the Mistaken Arrest will definitely be putting in a lot of work from this if it is one of those. I feel it maybe is one of the ones that you set earlier. Sometimes players like to hold back Dominus Impulses rather than setting them. Yes, of course, you don't have the holdback of not being able to use the particular attributes that are listed on it, but it means that if you do get hit with a Harpy's Feather Duster or a Lightning Storm, you still have a card that can interact with your opponent.
I was wondering if he was going to look at all of his cards and then flip Mistaken Arrest. That would have been very, very sneaky, but I think he's just going to keep us on the edge of our seats for a minute. Wait a moment.
Yeah, activate that Maliss in Mirror, being able to banish your Heart Scripter. Heart Scripter is going to come back even stronger than before, still with its effect intact, but also being able to negate the Aramasa. So there's no more advantage coming from that particular card at this exact moment in time for Cormac.
Yeah, it's a very good sign for Cormac, I think, because the cards you're afraid of are Mistaken Arrest, they are Draw and Lockbird and so on. But I don't think if you had either of those cards that you would be negating right here. You would probably let your opponent either you flip the Mistaken Arrest or let your opponent search their first card and then gleefully use your Draw and Lockbird. So maybe promising signs for Cormac. He's drawn a couple of cards. He's not got so much to push through, so let's find out what he can do.
Yeah, exactly that. I think they're just trying to possibly check exactly what is in the grave. We do know that Tony is on Bestials. One possible option, if that is a Bestial, is of course you can choose to target a Dark in his opponent's graveyard, but you can also target your own White Rabbit. That could lead you into the MTP07, which could in theory set you up with a nice banish effect, so that's something that's being considered. But it looks like we're going to instantly activate the Heart Scripter to deal with that Ice Ryzeal.
Yeah, it looked like a special summon of Ice, because we see the mirror in the graveyard there, so an interesting choice there from Cormac. Not normal summoning the Ice. Oh, I guess he normal summoned his Mitsurugi monster already. Makes a lot more sense now.
Yeah, I think sometimes you just have to kind of prioritize the two that you have, and having access to the Aramasa. when you're looking at those ones, again, these are the exact things we've been talking about all weekend. It comes down to these very minute details of player choice. Which one do you value the most? Which one do you feel could still be of use to you? And I feel that with the Arrow Master not being able to special summon itself from the hand as freely as maybe an Ice can be, you kind of have to take the lesser of two options on that one.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I said a minute ago that it was looking good for Cormac because no draws, no mistaken arrest, but you see your opponent here just like special summon an Ice, you just think fantastic, right? He's not using a Habakiri, he's not activating a ritual spell, he's not activating a pre-prep. In fact, seeing the mirror is fantastic because you know there could be no pre-preps activated.
Yeah, this is very, very interesting. So we're going to be activating the MTP07 and the GWC. Looks like the GWC is bringing back the red ransom, and then the MTP07 will allow Tony to search a follow-up for the next turn, possibly going into a Dormouse, as we have seen one white rabbit is currently in the graveyard, one white rabbit that was banished has gone back to the deck, and it looks like we're going to be adding the March here.
Strong part of me thinks maybe this is already Cormac's end phase, because I feel like why would you have like just activated both of your traps unprompted?
Agreed. Very interesting if it is the end phase and he decided to hold back that call by the grave.
Yeah, March Hare, I think being targeted there, yeah, because there's no way you'd target a March. I suppose you could, but like maybe Tony would have chained the March Hare if it was in fact still the main phase.
Yeah, agreed.
And here we go, and he's almost got 8,000 damage on the table, right? Because the Heart Scripter, as you mentioned, comes back with double the attack that it started with.
Yeah. Just a simple, there's the Artifact Lancer. Maybe a simple of just normal summon the White Rabbit is enough to push this through?
Yeah, you really don't need much here. It can just normal summon a White Rabbit. You could even chain Heart Scripter. That would almost be enough damage, right? Because you could banish the Red Ransom and then bring it back again, search another spell. I have a feeling, yeah, how much attack does March Hare actually have? Does it have more than 700? Because that's all it needs.
So it looks like we're going to be special. Yeah, we're going to Gate 3. So normal to make it easy on the other. Whoever is going to be the new UK national champion is certainly going to be earning it from this one.
Yeah, let's see how we begin. What will we see? Interruptions from Tony? Any Mulchamis in the main phase?
It looks like there are 2 trap cards, 2 monsters and a spell in Tony's hand. Bonfire is going to be very interesting if one of those monsters could possibly be a Droll and Lockbird.
Yeah, one of those cards that you really have to play because it just adds that extra consistency, but one of those cards that plays into the Droll and Lockbird, and the crowd cheering pretty much the lack of a Droll and Lockbird, I feel like. You hear them waiting to see, and no Drolls here.
Does look like we're going to be seeing the Infinite Impermanence on the Ice Ryzeal here. Followed up by the X Ryzeal, the best ideal extender for this one. And again, we've seen just how good the synergy works between the Mitsurugis and the Ryzeals. Being able to get those 2 level 4s on the field can either work their way to King of the Feral Imps in order to get you access to your Mitsurugi strategies, or they can work themselves into a duo drive on the other side of the hybrid to then work it into the Ryzeals themselves.
Yeah, you've got to think this is a massively good trade for Cormac here. That Ice Ryzeal trading with the Infinite Impermanence, but then you can use it as a level 4 body anyway. So into this King of the Feral Imps. It looks like King of the Feral Imps is resolving. Going to search presumably a Habakiri, but Cormac's not going to play ball and show us what it is.
Yeah, exactly like with round 1, keeping his cards very, very close to his chest. Tony's still kind of considering, we probably wanting to hope that that's not one of the Maliss trap cards in the hand. You don't want it to be an MTP07, and it's not, it's a Dominus Impulse.
Yeah, really interesting decision, yeah, to Dominus Impulse on the Habakiri, but I kind of like it because you're going to get the Saji, and oftentimes the wisdom is to let the Habakiri resolve, let it search Saji, and then just Dominus Impulse the ritual spell. Yeah. However, here, if you did that, then you would let the King of the Feral Imps be tributed and turn into a Saji, and then you'd give your opponent's Ryzeal engine an extra level 4 to work with.
Yeah, I also think it's quite important that the Impulse has actually destroyed the Habakiri, because then it means that it isn't that ritual material in the hand, but it looks like we're going to be able to use Preparation of Rites to work ourselves back into the materials that we're going to be needing anyway.
Yeah, so here comes the pre-prep, get the mirror. So the fact that the Habakiri is in the graveyard, almost meaningless, right? Because you can ritual it from the graveyard with the Mitsurugi mirror, Very, very good signs here for Cormac. 2 interruptions down from Tony, but seemingly not really affecting him very much at all.
No, exactly that. And I think when we're at this position here in the current game state, we've already kind of checked there's going to be no draw on Lockbird. We've already checked that there isn't really a Perulia, a Fluoros, or anything like that. And now I feel the only check possible is, I wouldn't even say an Ash Blossom. I'd probably say a Nibiru, if Tony is even playing that, for the pure fact that you are more than likely going to be ashing the preparation of Rights. And I can confirm there is no Nibiru in Tony's main or side deck. The only other form of hand trap interaction could possibly be a Bestial to deal with the Makumo when it attempts to try and come back from the graveyard. And even then that might be a step too late by the time we get to it.
Yeah, I feel like a Bestial, probably you would have just had to go for the Bestial, right? And just try and banish the Habakiri and see if that works and prevent the mirror from resolving and summoning from the grave. So maybe even that's a sign there's no Bestials. Pretty much couldn't be anything that Tony would not have used unless he's keeping his cards very close to his chest.
Yeah, exactly that. And Cormac is showing exactly what it takes to play through all these forms of interruptions, being able to kind of still present a field with all of this being utilized.
Here we go. Can't quite make out those cards, but there's got to be a Ritual and a Ritual Monster and a Mitsurugi Ritual among them, almost certainly. Here it comes, the Mitsurugi Ritual. Going to tribute some monsters from the deck. Still presumably got a Saji and another friend in the deck. Oh, going to get 2 more Ritual Summons. There's just so much going on here, so much advantage being accrued.
Yeah, and I feel that this is where it's going to start to snowball a little bit here. So being able to use the Saji and the Usanagi, both getting back some resources from the graveyard, more so from the deck. We have Prez recycled so that we can set up the Makumo's Field Raigeki effect, and we're going to be getting the Purification Track card just for extra measure in case Tony did open up a Lightning Storm to try and clear some form of interruptions off of Cormac's field.
Let's see, can Cormac, in addition to his Mitsurugi, can he get the Ryzeal engine fully flowing? He had to sort of sacrifice 2 level 4s to get into his Mitsurugi engine, but is there enough material, for example, to come up with a duo drive and start carrying on his Ryzeal journey? Yes, there is. Here comes the Sword Ryzeal. 1 more Ryzeal search. Wow, so much gas going on here for Cormac.
Yeah, unfortunately, when you are looking for this, Joel Lockbird would have kind of mitigated, if not stopped, every single one of these, bar the first one happening. Would have put Tony in a much better position, but there's all if, buts, and maybes, unfortunately. We are going to be seeing Cormac, as we've seen for the past 3 features, pilot the Mitsurugi strategy to near perfection, and then he's going to be passing it back to Tony eventually to say, this is what I've got for the final. Make it worth my time. So we're about to see if Tony can turn the tables on that one with everything he has left.
Cormac just having a little think here. Can you, and how many rank 4s can you afford to make? So he's using 2 Ryzeals there, so maybe this is just straight into Detonator. Yeah, here we go.
Yeah, I feel when you've already got the Purification, you've already got the Prayers, getting very simply into a Detonator. I mean, the spell could be a Metal Tronus, which is a nice trade 1-for-1 again, but still having to worry about the Purification, the Murakumo. Yeah, it does seem like quite a bit.
This feels like so much to deal with when you're already 2 cards down. We once again see Cormac's signature of setting the rest of his hand. We know at least the trap card is going to be there. Let's see what Tony has to offer.
Yeah, how much can the Maliss play through, being able to utilize? We can guarantee that Purification is along the spell and traps. We can also guarantee that Prez is along the spell and traps. One unknown, and we already know that Cormac does like to play either Warning or Strike, maybe the pair of them, but it will be one or the other. And Tony still needs to face down that Detonator and the Makumo. It's a lot to kind of be looking at. He's not giving up without a fight. We're going to be seeing this one through until the end. And there is the Metal Tronus to try and trade with the Detonator.
Yeah, here it comes. Do you just let it through, or is this worth a trap?
It's a very good question. I feel that the purification could probably add or provide you a little bit more value later on, but then with the amount of times that Maliss wants to activate said effect, I feel that if we have a Solemn Warning or a Solemn Strike, it's kind of okay to sacrifice it. But it looks like we're gonna allow the detonator to stay on the field and not let the Metal Tronus resolve.
So we're gonna search a card. Are we gonna summon back the Murakumo? All these questions.
I mean, there is the prayers still along the spell and trap zone. That could possibly be used, and better off to keep the Murakumo in the grave. But then, of course, that is a little bit risky because if that happens, the Bestial may rear itself. But we're going to be able to see exactly how much more Tony can push through. I suppose it is one way to leaving it in the graveyard, because then it means that it puts Tony in a position where he has to activate the Bestial in response to the prayers. And Cormac then has all control at that moment as to whether or not he wants to bring it back. And he can let the detonator do its job, especially if he chooses to use the Chessy Cat's effect here. I wouldn't be surprised if detonator is chained, exactly that, to deal with it. We're going to be trying to draw those 2 new cards, but remember that Tony has used up his normal summon now. He's going to be trying to draw into cards that are going to allow him to extend this field a little bit more. And if that is not the case...
Yeah, even if your Murakumo gets Bestial, that means that's 1 less card that can be used to banish a Maliss monster, because you really need to get your engine off the ground here, and it looks like that's going to be quite a difficult job. Staring down this detonator makes it so hard for any of your Cyburst monsters to stick to the field and start turning themselves into Link monsters. Already used the normal summon, unable to banish a Maliss card. You've got to think if there was almost any other Maliss card, you probably would have set it, banished that instead of the MTP.
Yeah, exactly that, just to kind of get you a bit more advantage. The only other Maliss name would be one that was drawn off the Chessy Cat. We seeing a pass from Tony here? It could quite possibly be the case. I suppose the question for Cormac is whether he wants to still try and activate the prayers to bring back the Murakumo, or whether he saves it for during his turn. Looks like we are going to be using the prayers, tributing off the Amarasa, paying those 800 life points.
Yeah, I feel like you might as well here. Tribute it off, and then if your opponent has a Bestial to Bestial your Murakumo, then you can just bring back a level 4 Ryzeal, but that is enough.
Tony's seen enough on that one. Offers the fist